Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And it's always a pleasure and a privilege for us to get together with all of you here on our channel. And if you're joining us here at YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, either one, we're so glad you stopped by, and we're thankful for all of you who share the links, who like and subscribe. We're certainly thankful for that. And we try to do a 10,000 foot view, guys, for those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time. We try to look at things from the biblical perspective and, try to, stay out of the fray a little bit. Many of us, if you're joining us, you're going to find those of us here on the chat are people that had once completely disconnected from the news because it was just too hard to deal with and much propaganda. And then there were those that were getting too much of it. And so we found this weekly, pace to be about right, to get our overview, to make sure we're staying connected. But we don't want to get ourselves too involved because, again, anxiety is a weapon of the enemy, and we know that. So we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And so that's something that we continue to say around here, and we try to aim for that. And that's kind of an important thing. For those of you, again, here for the first time, we do have a website, remnantwatch.com, that we post the articles on that we are watching and paying attention to. You'll notice there's a banner on the top that'll always bring you to the latest broadcasts. And since the time change, we are now 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. And again, the stories here you'll find are things that we're tracking. We do have a search bar for those of you that are catching up. And so, again, a valuable resource. We appreciate those of you that are part of the house, that are part of Remnant House, that make these broadcasts possible. And we're certainly welcome all of our Alliance members, part of the Alliance of Remnant Ministry. So certainly welcome you all to join us. And on that note, let's get into the news. And on tonight's top news, we've got a lot of rumbling going on. We're back into the Middle East here, folks. We had spent some time kind of away from there for a week or two, but not too long, because we've got to keep our eye on this part of the world. And of course, we continue to see the stoke up of additional conflict coming in this theater of operations. So certainly something that we've got to keep our eye on, right? And right now we've got Trump's top Middle East advisors are on a collision course in Syria, two Middle East allies, and that, of course, is Netanyahu and the president of Turkey, as regional and international stakeholders scramble to strike a deal over the war in Gaza. A dangerous rivalry is escalating between U.S. allies Israel and Turkey in Syria, where geopolitical fueled conflict persists 3 months after the fall of President Bashar al-Assad. Israel, emboldened by victories in its war with Hamas and Iranian allies in the region, has taken advantage of Syria's post-Assad chaos to seize more swaths of southern land beyond the long-occupied Golan Heights and establish a new buffer zone against potential foes. And so we're seeing that Israel, of course, is taking advantage of this situation that maybe they helped create. And they're certainly very, very aggressive. Now, the bottom line is that we know that this ends with a war, a great war, that culminates at the end of the age. And so we know that's unavoidable, because that's what the scripture tells us will happen at the end. But what we're watching, folks, is the slow accumulation of military hardware, military personnel, and all of that which will be needed for that great war in the very theater of operations that we're watching. So this does portend, unfortunately, for those in that area, very badly. It portends massive conflicts. So no, we're not done. They may pound out a peace agreement, so to speak, in Gaza, but that doesn't mean it will be for everyone. So this is going to still be a difficult neighborhood. In fact, the IDF just told their people to prepare for an immediate return for Gaza fighting. Now, this is after reports. This is while reports are coming in of a ceasefire, but they're not laying their, they're not, relaxing here. And so, in the Jerusalem Post, just in this last week, reported earlier that Israel will return to fighting in Gaza in about a week and a half, barring a breakthrough in talks. Now, they did have that breakthrough. We'll talk about that, but that is their posture. And so, Israel's political echelon, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has ordered the IDF to prepare for an immediate return to fighting in Gaza. And if many of you remember, they had activated 400,000 reservists. So they were definitely getting ready for conflict. And this is not a good sign, and we certainly want to continue to pray for those in that theater of operations, as we do here at New Kingdom. We pray continuously for those in harm's way, especially those in the land of Yasharel. And Israel is threatening intervention in Syria. So we are seeing a change of posture there, as well as Israel is threatening Syria's capital, Damascus, due to unrest there. And so a suburb of Damascus at the center of a new Syrian government's struggle for control. And now Israel is threatening to intervene due to unrest. A little bit trigger happy, if you ask me, turning this into a possible international incident. So we're going to be continuing to keep an eye on the conflict in Syria. As I've just said, it looks a bit trigger happy. They look a little too much like they want to go to conflict here, and we need to pray for cooler heads to prevail. We need to pray for shalom. We need to pray for wisdom in this hour. And of course, there are things again that we cannot avoid. The scripture will be fulfilled. That doesn't mean it's bad enough these things might be so without us wishing it. Amen. So there's that. And now the reports coming out, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently their conditions are that Hamas can no longer remain in Gaza. So in order for this peace deal to work, Hamas must leave Gaza for ceasefire deal to work. The Trump envoy is now saying President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, said Hamas has no other alternative but to disarm itself and exit Gaza for any ceasefire deal to work. Witkoff, who is traveling to Qatar on Monday to negotiate the next phase of the fragile truce, said peace cannot be reached so long as Hamas's military wing continues to exist and threaten Israel. And so this is interesting. This is the demolition, if you will, of this particular political group, which, by the way, this is a dangerous precedent because this was an elected, government. So this isn't a good precedent. It is a very dangerous thing to be doing. Nevertheless, this is where the world is at the moment. And so we're going to continue to watch with great interest. And now, I don't know if you guys saw this story. There's a tremendous amount of attention on the red heifer in Israel. But this Rabbi Ariel, says at this moment, it is not clear whether we have a red heifer suited for this ceremony. So that's an interesting development, don't you think? I do. It says the Rabbi Azariah Ariel, the head of the Temple Institute's Red Heifer Project, recently gave a Hebrew language interview answering many questions concerning the project's recent developments. And he said, at this moment, it is unclear whether we have in our possession in Israel a red heifer that is verifiably kosher and suited for the ceremony. And so they're now starting to walk this back. What makes this interesting to me, folks, is I've watched this whole red heifer thing since the 1990s. It's not the first one. It's not the first. And those of you that have been watching with us know this, that there were several of these. This is not the first time we've seen this euphoria, if you will, pick up. Now, I'd caution you to not get too overexcited because they've got several problems to solve, not just the heifer itself, but there's this matter of lighting that fire that has to be kadosh. So there are several technicalities they have, and a Bic lighter just isn't going to do. So there is that. And instead, what I would expect to see, and I think a lot of this is really them attempting to get ready for conflict, for more war. And it is a very, very bad foreboding. As a matter of fact, just on the 5th of March, this report was filed on the Jerusalem Post that the IDF chief Zamir declares that 2025 will be a year of war on Gaza and Iran. The new IDF chief of staff, Al-Yal Zamir, moves to restructure IDF strategy on Gaza and Iran. And so they're getting quite hawkish now about conflict, which is not a good sign. Incoming IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Al-Yal Zamir, told the High Command on Thursday night that 2025 will be the year of war. A year of war. Did you see that? It's just a statement. I mean, he thought about it. He planned what he was going to say. And this is what he came up with. After thinking about it as he walked up there, he said, what am I going to tell these people? What am I going to say when I get in there? He's the new IDF chief. He's like, I got to think about this. And this is what I've come up with. I've decided to tell you all that this will be a year of war focused on Gaza and Iran. Any questions, folks? When a person comes in and they just got approved and they come in and they tell you, that literally one of their first things they tell you is, this is what we're going to do. Well, that was probably the basis upon which they were approved for their post, which is why they're coming out pretty hot, coming straight out with that as their issue. And so we are definitely seeing the theater of operations heating up. And it's not just there, folks. We're seeing things happening all over the world. Look at this. Did you guys hear about this? This oil tanker missing crew ended after they were searching for a missing crew member. And this thing blew up in the North Sea off the coast of East Yorkshire. And I've got questions about this. It's kind of coincidental when it is known that the British are heavy supporters of the Ukrainians, which, of course, are at war with Russia. And so who thinks it's coincidental that would blow up? So, again, things are getting interesting around the earth right now. Good time to get in prayer. Good time to find your foal. Good time to get in the water if you haven't done that yet. And make sure that you are water baptized and ready to be added to the assembly. And, of course, they're talking a lot of peace right now. So there is a lot of discussion about this. Putin did put out, which I'm very happy to see this, Putin did put conditions to end the war in Ukraine immediately, which, again, we've been, as a household of shalom, our prayer for the nations is always for peace. That's just always going to be our thing. And Vladimir Putin has signaled his willingness to consider an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, although it would be under strict and potentially controversial conditions. As DJT pushes to broker a peace deal, the Kremlin also appears to be leveraging the opportunity to advance its own strategic objectives. The international community has been left reeling as Trump, in a stunning reversal of long-standing U.S. policy, has pivoted toward Moscow, while simultaneously placing increased pressure on Ukraine to negotiate. So as you can see, the Ukrainian president walked out of the White House thinking he was just going to just tell Mr. Trump what for. Mr. Trump just went ahead and turned all of his weapons off and support off. And now we're going to have a new conversation. So word is that they're now trying to work out a deal. And I think Trump is increasingly trying to look very tough. He wants to portray this. So he's looking for someone to show himself real tough with, like he did with those Somalis. But apparently the world didn't get the message. So he's looking for another good example. Pay attention, folks. He's looking for somebody to spank. Okay. And that's why you're going to see things like this. Trump tells Hamas, you are dead, as he warns terror group, I'm sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job in Gaza. He wants to look tough. Why? Because he figures if he looks real tough, then it's easier to negotiate. The guy's a chess player. President Donald Trump has put out another dire threat to Hamas after the White House confirmed direct talks with the group as part of an effort to finally secure the release of hostages and bodies of the deceased. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose the release of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it's over for you. And so he's threatening very hard, very heavy, in a very tough neighborhood, and he's unafraid. He's coming in with a very, very heavy hand attitude. This is going to be met with conflict. This is not going to be easy to do. You're not just going to go into this neighborhood. I'm telling you right now. I don't care who you are. And this is going to end in conflict. So stand by, folks, because when they shall say peace and safety, okay? And so, they are trying very hard, though. You have to give them credit for that. We're seeing a lot of news and leaks saying that there's efforts to bring us to a more peaceful world. Trump is warning the U.S. is down to final moments to block Iran going nuclear. And something's going to happen very soon, as he's beginning to telegraph that if they cannot come up with an agreement that they're comfortable with, which is whatever that means, which I'm sure means that they're going to restrict Iran to whatever they consider to be a safe level. This is going to continue to be a problem. And I do believe that these are times when people are not going to trust. President Trump warned Friday, we are down to the final moments to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, adding that while he hoped for a negotiated settlement, so there is rumors that he is doing that, military action was still possible. And so, folks, once the United States, not Israel, but the United States decides it's going to take on Iran, that's another level of conflict. And I am very concerned that will also activate those that are here in the United States and in Western nations that have mixed loyalties. And so I think that this is not going to be an easy conflict if it erupts. I believe that it is a very dangerous time, and it portends great tribulation in the West as well as the theater of operations across the earth. And again, it's getting very deadly. Places that where they just had a turnover of government, and people may have thought things were going to settle down. Well, Syrian security forces executed 125 civilians in a battle against Assad loyalists. So if you think that this couldn't happen in your country or in your neighborhood, well, I promise you these folks didn't think so either. But suddenly, there they are. About 125 civilians have been executed by government security forces in northwest Syria during a rolling 2-day battle with loyalists to the ousted Assad regime, a Syrian War Monitor report on Friday. And so they're continuing to have these conflicts there. So the blood is staying hot. The revenge blood, you know what I mean by revenge blood? That's staying really hot in this theater of operations, guys. And that is not cooling off. So you're going to continue to see more and more conflict, and eye for an eye. And you know what they say, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. So it's a very dangerous, dangerous time indeed. And we also have, here on the other side of the world, we also have, what are they talking about now? Well, they're talking about war with China. China! Want to go to war with China? We're prepared for a war with China, Trump's defense secretary says. Because, we don't got enough conflict in the world. We're ready for war with China. That's what the defense secretary says after Xi threats as tariff scrap escalates dramatically. So it's starting to get hot. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declared that the U.S. is prepared for war with China in response to Beijing's chilling World War III threat. Why is this important? Because the scripture tells us that the Euphrates River will dry up and the kings of the east will be a part of that last day's battle. So do we find it surprising that we're going to see these foes starting to escalate? Now, President Trump's fresh 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada took effect on Tuesday alongside double duties on Chinese goods, sparking devastating trade wars. And you're going to continue to see this as the U.S. directly takes on China in this trade conflict. And I do believe that Trump is using Canada and Mexico in this little game, a little brinksmanship that he is doing. And of course, China is not budging. China is quite, confident and ready for conflict with the United States. They're not afraid. They say they're ready for war with America, and Beijing boasts defense spending by 7.2% and warns Washington that it is prepared to, quote, fight until the end. And this is a reason why Trump wants to maintain a reasonable relationship with Russia, because it makes it difficult for China to take over. China has said it is ready for war with America as it raises defense spending and imposes retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports. In a direct threat to Donald Trump, China's representatives in America said if war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight until the end. So they're not going to give up quickly. That kind of verbiage says that this will be a tough negotiation. Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary in turn, said the U.S. is prepared to go to war. Prepared to go to war and prepared to win is a different thing. A lot of war games have been played where the U.S. takes on China, and you can look up and see on the internet how the U.S. does. I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm not going to spoiler alert that for you. Okay. But you guys go take a look at that and you decide how you feel about that. But these tariff wars have a reason, have a purpose. This is a spanking not of China, but of American companies that took their manufacturing overseas, thinking that they would have more favorable conditions. As you're seeing, what the result is companies like Apple, which agreed to, I think, $600 billion, some ridiculous amount of money, or some other thing like that. Saudi Arabia now committing to build inside the United States. You're seeing companies that had plans on building plants out of the United States change their plans, like General Motors and some of the other manufacturing that now has changed their plans as a result of these tariffs. So the tariffs aren't all just about raising money. What he is cleverly doing is changing the mindset and the decision making. He's getting into the boardrooms and he's getting them to say, okay, well, now we've got new dynamics, and a small change makes a huge difference when you get up to the billions and so forth. So these companies that had put plants in China and were employing Chinese workers and were helping the Chinese economy are now going to be pulling out of there. So what's that going to do to the Chinese economy? Well, that's going to kill it. That's going to down the economy, and that's going to hurt their growth pace. So he's doing something now that will eventually erode China's great growth, because they rely on a lot of manufacturing as their base. And so if you start to erode that, if you want to be an American or supply the American market, you're going to have an American plant. That changes the deal. And so that seems to be what he is using these tariffs to accomplish. And as a result of his efforts, folks, look at this. Donald Trump is being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by a California congressman. Am I reading that right? A California congressman? It almost shocks you, right? President Donald Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by a California congressman. Trump's nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize highlights the ongoing political divide over his foreign policy legacy. Supporters argue that his efforts in the Middle East justify recognition, while critics say Trump does not deserve the award. Funny how they are critical of him, yet they gave it to Obama, who did not insist on peace anywhere. So this is really an interesting thing. I just thought it was fascinating, because it's a little bit of worship. And we were warned about one that would come along and come in peaceably. And so if we have a moment of peace that we say peace and safety, and then sudden destruction comes, we would have our answer, wouldn't we? For which reason we watch. And so now China is basically saying that it's going to strike back after U.S. Tariffs are imposed and lists of products it's going to target. So it is not playing. China has announced additional tariffs on U.S. agricultural products and food items. Okay. But I don't know if that's going to last because, again, America is kind of the breadbasket. And so there's a lot that America does provide that you do need. And the tariffs threaten to increase the prices, putting pressure on Trump, which he thinks he can outlast them. I don't know. This is going to be an interesting form of conflict here. And I do think it is warfare. It is economic warfare, but it is warfare, and it can cause just as much devastation as bombs. And don't think it can't. Okay, so and now you're going to notice that, as I said, you're going to see them call out China or Canada and Mexico separately. Why is that? Well, because they weren't really the target. So he put a little pain there. He got him to change the conversation, got him to think about it. And now he's going to come in with, a new deal, right? So this is the Trump style. This is the way he rolls. It's one of the things that he likes to do. And so now, of course, they're doing, the back and forth. But this is negotiations, folks. This is why he turned them off right away. All right. This is the way he does things. So once you figure that out and you understand that that's what he's doing, you don't get as bothered by it. But for those that are not aware of it, he just moved everybody and he got everybody freaking out, including Wall Street. Take a look at this. Wall Street banks say markets are flashing rising recession risk. They're freaking out and panicking as the markets are reacting because they're taking all the criminal money out. That's the truth. Plain and simple. If you take all the criminal activity out, you're going to find out that a large chunk of your economy was actually criminal behavior. And the problem with that is that then affects your economy. So you start thinking something's wrong with the economy. No, you just locked up a bunch of criminals that were trading on your markets. You stopped allowing them to trade cryptocurrency. So what did you just do? You created a crypto repository for all criminal crypto. Well, guess what's starting to happen now? Criminals are exiting that space because they're afraid of their assets being seized. See that? So now that won't be a haven for them because now they've created a repository. We're going to get there. That, basically is a place where they're going to put that. So now you've monetized the seizure of digital assets. This world is changing quick. You got to stay on top of it. And this is why Canada reacted so quickly. The Canadian premier threatens to cut off U.S. electricity exports. Okay. And they don't care because they will do it with a trade war. And again, America's not trying to go on a trade war with these guys, but they're not afraid of doing so because they want to renegotiate these deals. So while on the one hand, I'm not going to read all this. You guys can take a look at this on remnantwatch.com. But what you're continuing to see here is a tit for tat. Now, why is this important? Because remember, folks, their agenda, though they try to do this utopic agenda, what does the scripture tell us in the book of Revelation we end up at? A whole day's wages for a loaf of bread. So collapse is a very real possibility. We see tremendous evidence in the scripture in the book of Revelation of economic collapse, a complete devastation to the economic systems. And so there are many who are anticipating that. And so I think that it is a very dangerous time to be taking these things lightly. What will endure and what has always endured these difficult times is when people unite. Trying to go it alone during this time period, it's just got to be the craziest, most poorly thought out plan you can possibly have. And even EU leaders are starting to figure it out. They can't count on the United States anymore. So now EU leaders back new military spending plans at a Ukraine summit because they now are figuring out that unless they want to pay Donald Trump and the United States for the services they've been rendering, then they're going to have to pay for it themselves. So they'd rather pay for it themselves. Now they're about to find out what it costs for military protection, right? They're going to find out what the cost is. And European Union leaders on Thursday committed to a massive step in defense cooperation following decades of hesitation, spurred on by President Donald Trump's repeated warnings that he would cut them adrift to face the threat of Russia without the overwhelming U.S. military might. The 27 leaders signed off on a move to loosen budget restrictions so that willing EU countries can increase their military spending. And they now have to go to like $800 billion. So they're going to spend nearly $1 trillion. And that doesn't necessarily, spending money doesn't necessarily mean that you're all there already. But they're let them spend that money, because the U.S. is going through a transformation internally from the corporation to the republic, which means they've got to write checks with a different system. And that's why you're going to see massive, dramatic reduction of overhead before they finally get to their final budget, which they're trying to get through now, but they're slow walking it while they're cutting costs. Why? Because they got a different wallet and a different system they got to pay these bills with. So that's why don't let them make you think that they're being super altruistic and awesome about, government spending. That's just, they don't have a choice. They can't cover everything. So they got to go through everything and figure out what they have to keep and what they can afford to keep and what they can chuck, because they can't afford it. They don't have it. And that's reality. As a matter of fact, even the collection arm of the former corporation is suddenly finding itself in difficult days. The IRS is drafting plans to cut as much as half of its 90,000 person workforce, AP sources say. The IRS is drafting plans to cut its workforce by as much as half through a mix of layoffs, attrition, and incentivized buyouts. Who's incentivizing the buyouts? The current administration is incentivizing buyouts for a reason, according to two people familiar with the situation. And so we are seeing massive change. Well, if you're about to move to a national sales tax and do that, which is legal, lawful, according to the Constitution, if you're going to go do that, then you don't need all of these other things. You're also going to get rid of a whole lot of regulation at the same time, which will not only speed things up, but also massively impact the economy. So if that's on its way, and I'm not saying it is, but if it is, and I'm not saying it is, it's just my opinion, but if it is, well, that would be the kind of thing you might want to do. You might want to downsize ahead of time. You might want to get rid of a bunch of extra employees that you're not going to need in your new streamlined, fast paced, AI controlled mochaccino land that you're headed towards. So stand by, folks. It ought to get real exciting. And of course, now, Europe's got to take on their responsibilities. So Poland is announcing its military training plan for all men, which I do think is appropriate, because Poland tended to get, I think they got a bit arrogant, and I think that's a really good thing for the Polish. I think it's good for all Europe. I think it's all good for the whole world. Everybody, start taking responsibility for their families, and maybe we wouldn't have so much war, because we'd all go, wait a minute, this is stupid, and these weapons are bad. Work is underway to make all men in Poland undergo military training. And again, I think everybody should do this so that we wouldn't go to war. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said in a speech to the Polish parliament. Tusk said the government aimed to give full details in the coming months. Efforts are being made to prepare large-scale military training for every adult male in Poland. Now, I don't really think we should go to war, but I think it's good to scare people of it. I think one good thing that happens when you go to military training is you start to get a healthy respect for the power of the weapons. And that's something that I will never forget. And that's why I do not believe that there's any good benefit for a bomb. And I was a gunner's mate. And I think it's, you want to see real up close and personal what those things can do. And then you go, never mind, there's no good value to that. So come, Maranatha, Yahusha, Maranatha. Switching gears here, we're seeing the earth beginning to react to the transformation that is going on. And we continue to watch this, guys, as again, Matthew 24 tells us that the earth will respond, right? So this is another area that we keep watch. and California was rocked by 7 earthquakes in less than 24 hours. That's noteworthy. Okay, so we're going to keep an eye on stuff like that. That happened a little over a week ago, and we're just now getting to it because we had so much news last week. We just didn't get to it. But California has experienced 7 earthquakes in less than 24 hours, with the last one striking, and this is again a week ago, Friday. The U.S. Geological Survey detected 5 quakes along the San Andreas Fault that experts say is overdue for a magnitude 8.0 or higher, known as the big one. So just a heads up for those of you on the West Coast, it is rumbling underneath your feet. So just be aware of that and be wise as you're making your plans and praying where you should be. Okay. And this is a real thing, folks. We also have damaging winds and tornadoes and all kinds of other things going on. So I heard about another Arctic blast coming down this weekend coming up. We got another one of those polar vortexes coming down, folks. What's going on, right? But right now, according to AccuWeather, millions are bracing for, damaging winds and tornadoes as deadly severe weather shifts east. And the risk, of course, is continuing. And we had some footage. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, look at this, guys. Tornado hits a Florida TV station during a live weather broadcast. So they're talking about the weather and got hit by the weather. Television meteorologist broadcast live on the air as a tornado hit his station in Lake Mary, Florida, near Orlando. That's near my cousin. Hey, I hope you're okay over there. The meteorologist, Brooks Garner, warned employees to take shelter. Lights flickered during the broadcast. When it was all over, Garner said he'd never experienced anything like it. Florida has been hit lately, getting a lot going on there. Tornado hit the TV station while they're on the air talking about the weather. You can't make this up. It's crazy. That is wild. And can you imagine being there? And we made several reports. I'm not going to do a lot about this today, the airlines and all that stuff. There continues to be more aircraft and more things happening that are really suspicious in that sort of general space. So we will come back to that. We'll circle back to that. We'll circle the airport and come back to that one again. But I did find this interesting because this is not the first time we've seen something happening over Mar-a-Lago. Okay. This is very concerning. This is now multiple times we've reported this. So an Air Force intercepts 2 aircraft in restricted airspace near Mar-a-Lago. So this is now multiple times. U.S. Air Force jets intercepted in an aircraft that flew over President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida in violation of temporary flight restrictions on Sunday, NORAD said. So we are concerned about, hey, is there a possibility of additional conflict, trying to get things going there? I do remember, see if I can find it, that we did have a story about someone that was shot by the Secret Service. I think it's on Remnant Watch. It was shot by the Secret Service trying to breach the White House or near the White House. So again, interesting things going on. Is there an attempt to bring us into chaos? A lot of people are very high on, Trump. What if he were removed? What would happen? There's so many potential things that could change from one day to the next. In our world could be dramatically shifted. So definitely something for us to be aware of and be paying attention to. Shifting gears, I want to touch on this story because we have all become a little too comfortable with the social media and social connections that are very lifelike, seem very real, seem very authentic, and a lot of times can become tragic and dangerous. And so we have certainly experienced that here, where you meet people, you think you're connecting, you think you've got a new friend or a relationship, and then it turns strange and odd and dangerous. Okay. And so I really want to caution everybody about how you bring these internet relationships into natural connections, because that is not easy to do and can be very dangerous. And here, this next story is very, very hard to read, but it is a reality of our world. And I want to caution everybody, especially those of you with young people, about allowing them to utilize social media without supervision. That's a horribly bad idea in this moment. And if you're a 15, 16, 17-year-old who's going to get all upset and storm out of the room because I said that, well, I'm with mom and dad. Sorry. We'll get you through the tunnel, then you can figure it out at that point. These predators ain't playing, and it is not a joke. It is as serious as it gets. And here we're going to show you exactly why it is a dangerous world. Teen was kidnapped, killed, and dismembered by a Florida couple that she met online. Miranda Corset, 16, was reported missing on February 24th. A 16-year-old from Florida was allegedly kidnapped, killed, and dismembered by a couple after meeting a man through social media, authorities said. Steve Kress, 35, was arrested and was charged with kidnapping Miranda Corset in St. Petersburg, Florida. Authorities said his partner, 37-year-old Michelle Brandis, turned herself in on Saturday morning. And, of course, they are demonized. Gress and Brandis have now been charged with first-degree murder in Corset's killing. Police believe that Corset was killed somewhere between February 20th and 24th following a dispute. And this is a 16-year-old child, folks. This person was still a child. Had no business with these folks at all. And because of lax security, so dads, because of lax security, because they weren't on lockdown, okay? This little girl's gone because she wasn't on lockdown. And she died a horrible death because she wasn't on lockdown, okay? This social media is like they go fishing, and they're fishing for the kids. They're fishing for the children. They're fishing for babies. And we are the real defense. I mean, this is the parents have got to defend your children. And this technology is their doorway. It's the way they're getting in. And so you can't just spy on your child or keep an eye. No, you've got to actively engage with your child. And anyone that is exerting influence on your child is a potential risk. So this is a really dangerous time period, my friends. And I caution you, especially with social media. The police are telling you that. Law enforcement all over the world are all saying it. Everybody's saying the same thing. Watch what you post, keep an eye on your children, and don't let them have free access, because even this is a 16-year-old. So you'd have thought she had pretty good sense, right? 16 years old, right? Most people would have thought she's a good babysitter, right? Good sense. Somebody you can send to the store, and with money, they come back with the change. Made a really bad decision, didn't she? Okay. And the next thing you know, she's gone. And the reason why is because we're dealing with demonic forces. We're dealing with these social media things did open doorways. People that don't have what you have been pulled out. So you're being protected, right? You're getting pulled away. So you're coming closer and closer to the protector. Correct? Okay. What about the ones that aren't? Well, who are they getting drawn toward? They're getting drawn more toward the wicked one, which is why we're going to see things like this, folks. This is what you should expect to see as the day of wickedness continues to approach. Sickening attack. Masked man randomly stabs an elderly woman in her neck as she gardens outside her home, just randomly, out of nowhere, and for no reason, not even to rob someone. A masked man is said to have randomly stabbed an elderly woman in her neck while she was gardening outside her home before fleeing. Officers raced to the scene in Middleton, Manchester after reports of an assault at 11:20 at Thursday morning. The woman, aged in her 70s, did not believe received serious injuries from the incident, but had been left quite shaken following the attack, said the cops. So thankfully, this person did not kill But how many know that easily could have? Could have been a deadly attack. We could have been reading about the death of this poor woman. And this is the demonic manifesting, where they can't even control their body movements, where they can't control their rage, where those thoughts that go through their mind that a normal person could throw a thought down and go, what in the world was that? They act on that. They don't have the mental toughness that you're developing. All right. So when they're suggested some wicked deed, they meditate on it and marinate on it. And then that spirit gets them to do it or act out on it. And so this is why it's very dangerous. The voices you listen to in your head, the narrative in your head, it matters. It really, really does. And so our world has lost its bearings, lost its moral compass. And this is why you, as the ecclesia, have to shine your light before men. What is that light? That light is understanding. So when you shine and demonstrate the boundaries of commandments, the boundaries of decency, of common decency, of love one for another, of the way in which society should run, this then corrects these things. Without you, they will lose their complete compass. If you don't think so, you don't think you're important? You don't think you matter? You don't think that your absence will mean that they go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Oh, really? Hey, look at that, David. They think that you're not important. You want to know how important you are? Here, this is while you're here. Imagine if you were gone. This is while you're here. A huge number of people admit they'd be cool with their partner hooking up. Yeah, you're reading that right. Yep, you're reading that right. Not kidding. Yep, there it is, Daily Star. Right? They printed this. They actually did. Yes, sir. They said it. That's how, if you're wondering about idiocracy, okay, if you're wondering if these people are literally losing their minds, do they need you? Do you think now you are necessary? Yes? Okay, good. Because look, they are losing their minds. Okay. A staggering number of individuals have confessed that they wouldn't mind if their partner engaged with a sex robot, according to a recent survey. A Zip Health poll aimed to gauge the extent to which people are open to this. Why are they doing this? To get ready for, again, low population. This is not like a hidden agenda. This is kind of right in your face. Unreal, folks. Again, we share these things because this is the beast speaking, right? So we were told in the book of Revelation that the beast would speak. So we're seeing various ways in which technology is speaking. And I got to tell you, we're sitting back watching this stuff going, every time we think we've seen, come on, guys, admit it. Every time we think we've seen them go to where, like, okay, this is pretty bad, they take it up a notch. Come on, they take it up another notch. So if it wasn't so absolutely primordially, disgustingly bad, it's almost entertaining how far they go. Unbelievable, almost. But it is unfortunate that the reality is that souls are at stake. And then it's not entertaining. Now it's very, very serious. And they continue to play games with people's minds. Now, in recent years, and especially in the last few years, there's been a real decrease in confidence in certain medical procedures that people are no longer confident in. So who finds it surprising that they went and grabbed an old standby, something that is injection preventable? Let's put it like that. And next thing you know, we've got ourselves an epidemic sort of to recover, the societal value, right? Just to remind you of the societal value of certain medical procedures. And one of the most contagious viruses in the world is spreading around the United States so far in 2025. There have been 3 distinct measles outbreaks in the last 164 cases reported in the Centers of blah, blah, blah prevention coming from the United States. And of course, they're going to mention to you this, right? Why? Because they want to make that point. That's the entire point of the story. It's the entire point of the whole thing, is to bring this back into the conversation as a positive, to give it a positive entry point. It's the entire point of it. The whole thing is manipulation. And so understand that what you're watching is a lot of manipulation out there, folks, and it's very dangerous. Here's another thing that's being manipulated, very dangerous stuff. And I can't believe that people aren't looking into these things after what we've been through. People who take this Ozempic, how many have heard about this? Okay. Patients are losing key bodily functions as doctors warn of new terrifying side effects. Okay. And so this is getting scary. Doctors are warning about side effects, and that'll happen when you take lizard venom as a diet pill, because that's in the garden, because that's scriptural. Let's take lizard venom, which, by the way, is an unclean animal, so not kosher, not cool. Number one diet selling product out there. And their side effects. Imagine that. Imagine that. Who's shocked? Come on. Raise your hand if you're shocked. Right? Nobody's surprised. And the war that you're now seeing is now a cyber war. So you're going to continue to see these kinds of stories. Just like that trade war and the tariff war, you're also going to see a digital war. You see a lot of breaches and things like this. This year is going to be a lot of warfare. Elon Musk says X facing massive cyber attack. Gee, I can't imagine where that might be coming from, Eastern Europe. I just can't imagine, where you might have enemies, right? So originating from the Ukraine area. Oh, there it is, Eastern Europe. Imagine that, okay? And Musk says X cyber attack was done with a lot of resources, suggests a large coordinated group using IP addresses from the Ukraine area were involved. Now, that could also be just a spoof. In other words, somebody making it look like it's coming from Ukraine. After all, we all know about IPNs and how you can make yourself look like you're coming from somewhere and you're really somewhere else. So none of this is believable at this point, and a lot of it is, again, manipulation. So be careful how much of this you allow to inform your decision making. Be careful with the emotional decision making. That's probably the number one thing we want to help you completely eliminate, is all those emotional decisions based in fear or anxiety. None of that. You pray, you seek the face of the Most High, and you do wise things at wise moments. And that's why we take our time as children of light. Now, some people are really concerned about this digital currency stuff, and I get it, folks. I get your concern. And I want to tell you something. I've been on the eschatology space since the late 1970s. So let me put it into perspective for you. I got your concern when you were concerned when they started to use credit cards with those swipe things. Remember those? And they printed in 3 carbons. And if you didn't have a credit card, this is late 70s. You couldn't buy or sell without that. Remember that? And how many remember when they finally went to the digital form? Oh boy, that was the mark of the beast for sure. And you guys remember that there was the UPC symbols? Remember that? That was the mark of the beast. Remember that? Or how about when Walmart came out and all the grocery stores came out with the scanners? Remember that? That was definitely like beast technology. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that every time there's an innovation, anytime there's anything that comes out, the believers tend to be the most scaredy cats of everything. I remember when the internet first came out, and I remember believers, and I remember this because I was a pastor, and they're all like, no, it's of the devil. It's of the devil. And so they gave it to the devil. And now we've been fighting to get it back ever since, because it's full of junk. And had we taken it and, jumped on it from day one, it wouldn't have gotten that way. But because we all went like this and then realized, oh, wait, that isn't actually, okay. I remember when flip phones, people thought, oh, right hand, oh, a flip phone, that you can't, people are buying and selling with flip phones. And then that was turned into, that has to be it. I'm not kidding, folks. This is reality. And what happens when that happens is it the forward people thinking people who are getting into new spaces get ahead of you, and then you end up playing catch up the rest of the time. Same thing happened with mobile when we switched from flip phones, the analog style, if you will, over to the smartphone, which happened about 2010, 2011, when 50% went into the smartphone. A lot of people missed that. And there were a lot of business opportunities that were missed because of that. And so fear, anxiety, fear of the new technologies, fear of the way in which things work is a huge, huge impediment to progress in good wisdom. One of the things that we use for the last 30 some odd years is digital currency in the form of debit cards. I don't know if you didn't know this, but every time they load a debit card, they're taking your money and turning it into a digital currency called Visa or MasterCard. Whichever one you happen to be using, that was what the merchant would take, and it would instantly turn back into US dollars when it dropped into their account. And so you were already using that type of system this entire time. So those that are trying to make you fearful of it and are putting you in a fearful state, saying, no, stay back here with the fiat system, don't understand that this is exactly the same thing that happens when we went from watching analog television to VCRs to microwaves to air fryers. Every time there's a progress point, there's a bunch of folks that are like, and they don't understand what they're looking at, and they become fearful. This is what's happening, I believe, in the digital space. And so this is going to mean a lot of people are going to run away in fear. The wise are going to jump in and take advantage of that. And then later on, when the full adoption occurs, because you ain't going nowhere else but full adoption, folks, in case you didn't know that. When the full adoption occurs, now they're at the retail end instead of the wholesale end. Happens every time. I have watched this cycle so many times. So I'm just giving you this piece of advice. For those of you that tend to drag your feet, you might want to pay attention to these hints that are being dropped, because generational wealth is probably going to be made in the next 12 months. And the White House is now declaring that the United States will be the Bitcoin or digital capital of the world. This is important. It buys groceries. That's why it matters. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The White House has declared America will be the Bitcoin superpower as President Trump established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, making a historic shift in the U.S. cryptocurrency policy. The cryptocurrency community is filled with optimism following President Donald Trump's recent initiative to bolster the United States' position in the digital asset. And the way that this is going to work is he will be this is not them purchasing, this is them putting what is seized from police actions in a reserve. That is how much they expect to seize. That's also what the U.S. government currently owns, but this is also what they intend to seize. Do you understand? So that's why you're seeing, I believe, a dip right now, a massive dip. This is also the date the IS-20022 bank compliance was required. They did move that back to July. At least that's the rumor. However, they still were trying to aim for today. So this is their entry window. So they lowered an entry window for their on-ramp. Those of you who understand that language know that you should see that go up after they've already finished their on-ramping. This is a huge moment. So just this last week, we had the crypto leaders meet at the Trump summit with the strategic reserve in focus. So you can put your head in the sand if you want to and pretend it's not going to affect you like people did when they said the same thing about the internet. No, I'm not going to look. It's the internet. I'm not looking over there. And, it's unavoidable. You're going to deal with it. So get in it and understand it. That doesn't mean you have to be its slave. Doesn't mean you have to chase it, but you shouldn't be ignorant of what you're looking at. And so this is an important part of the way your world is going to work. You need to know how to avoid the pitfalls. U.S. President Donald Trump wooed the cryptocurrency industry elite at the White House on Friday, hosting a first-of-its-kind summit focused on his plans for a government-owned stockpile of digital assets. So anybody saying that these things were going to go away and be of no value was obviously wrong. There's a reason why the government is stockpiling these things. You don't stockpile something that's worthless. I'll say again, you don't stockpile things that are worthless. So there's a reason why they're doing this. They're getting ahead of you. Very few people are paying attention, and even the ones that are paying attention, a very small number are actually adopting. So right now, I think we are at about, 17, 18, something under 20% adoption. And if this continues, we are going to be going over 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe as close to 100% adoption, which means that you're going to see this space dramatically grow. So those that are looking only at the short term will get caught by the regulatory behavior that is going on right now. And this is exactly what affected this same space in 2018 and going into 2019, when there was an executive order seizing the assets of those involved in child trafficking. And so understand that as regulatory behavior comes in, it has a dampening effect on the market. So it's like the inspectors are all in and all the I dotters and T crossers are walking through. It's not exactly conducive to free flow. But after this period ends, so this is an on-ramping period. And after this on-ramping period ends and those forces abate, you're going to see a takeoff. So stand by, folks. This is about to get interesting. Well, that's it for today. I pray this broadcast has been a berakah to you wherever on earth you are. It is always our pleasure to come to where you are and encourage you in your walk with Messiah. We take that 10,000-foot view to encourage you to remember to look up, for your redemption draws nigh. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.